The metal groaned like a dying animal as Harrison Palmer threw his shoulder against the driver's side door, his breath forming white clouds in the frigid air while snow continued to fall in thick sheets around him. Inside the crumpled luxury sedan, a woman with auburn hair matted with blood pressed against the steering wheel, her green eyes wide with pain and fear. And Harrison knew he had maybe minutes before hypothermia became as dangerous as whatever injuries she'd already sustained in the crash. "Stay with me," Harrison called through the window, his voice rough from the cold. "I'm going to get you out." The woman's lips moved, but no sound came out. Harrison could see her trembling, whether from shock or cold he couldn't tell, probably both. The front of her vehicle had accordioned against a massive oak tree, steam still rising from the destroyed engine despite the blizzard conditions. He'd been driving home from his second shift at the warehouse when he'd spotted the skid marks and the broken guardrail on this back road outside of Millbrook. Harrison yanked his phone from his pocket, cursing when he saw the no signal indicator. Of course. This whole stretch of Route 47 was a dead zone, and the storm had probably knocked out what few towers serviced the area anyway. He was on his own, which meant she was depending entirely on him. "Okay, listen to me," Harrison said, pressing his face close to the window. "I need to break this glass to get to you. Cover your face with your arms if you can." The woman managed a small nod, turning her head away and lifting one arm shakily. Harrison grabbed the tire iron from his truck and positioned himself, then swung hard at the passenger window. The safety glass spiderwebbed but held. He swung again, harder, and this time it gave way, scattering pebbled fragments across the interior. Harrison cleared the remaining glass from the frame and reached inside, unlocking the door and pulling it open. Cold air rushed into the vehicle's interior. Up close, he could see the woman more clearly. Mid-30s, wearing what looked like an expensive business suit now torn and stained, a gash across her forehead still bleeding sluggishly. Her breathing was shallow and rapid. "Can you tell me your name?" Harrison asked, his emergency response training from his volunteer firefighter days kicking in despite it being years since he'd been able to afford the time to volunteer. "Vivienne," she whispered. "Vivienne Vance. My leg, I think it's stuck." Harrison leaned further into the car, snow blowing in behind him. Her right leg was indeed pinned between the crushed dashboard and the seat. He could see her foot at an odd angle, and his stomach tightened. Moving her wrong could cause serious damage, but leaving her here would be fatal. "Vivienne, I'm Harrison. How long have you been here?" "I don't know, 20 minutes, an hour. I called for help, but then my phone died." Her voice cracked. "It's so cold." Harrison made a decision. "I'm going to try to move the dashboard enough to free your leg. It's going to hurt." "Just do it. Please." He braced himself against the passenger seat and pushed against the dashboard with all his strength. Years of warehouse work had kept him strong, but the metal barely budged. He repositioned, planting his feet on solid ground outside and leveraging his weight differently. This time, he felt it shift slightly. Vivienne gasped in pain. I know, just a little more." Harrison gritted his teeth and pushed harder, muscles screaming in protest. The dashboard moved another inch, then another. "Can you pull your leg free?" Vivienne bit her lip hard enough to draw blood, but she managed to extract her leg from the space. She immediately cried out, doubling over as much as her position allowed. Easy," Harrison said, breathing hard. "We need to get you into my truck. Can you move?" "I think so." Harrison helped her turn in the seat, supporting her weight as she tried to stand. When she put weight on her right leg, she collapsed against him with a sharp cry. Without hesitation, Harrison swept her up in his arms, cradling her against his chest. She was lighter than he expected, and he could feel her shivering violently now. The walk back to his truck, parked 20 yards away with its hazards blinking orange through the white curtain of snow, felt like miles. Harrison's boots slipped on the ice beneath the fresh powder, but he kept his balance, keeping Vivienne as steady as possible. She buried her face against his shoulder, and he could feel the warmth of her blood seeping through his jacket. He managed to open the passenger door and settled her as gently as possible onto the worn bench seat. The truck was still running, heat blasting from the vents. Harrison grabbed the emergency blanket from behind the seat and wrapped it around Vivienne's shoulders, then did a quick assessment. The head wound looked worse than it probably was. Scalp wounds bled heavily. But her leg concerned him more. He couldn't tell if it was broken without an X-ray, but it was definitely injured. "I need to get you to a hospital," Harrison said, "but I have to make a stop first. My daughter. She's with a neighbor, but I was supposed to pick her up half an hour ago. She'll be worried sick." Vivienne nodded, her teeth chattering. "Of course, your daughter comes first." Harrison climbed into the driver's seat and carefully turned the truck around, heading back the way he'd come. The roads were getting worse by the minute, and his truck, reliable as it was, struggled for traction in places. He kept his speed low and his attention focused, acutely aware of his injured passenger and his need to get home. "How old is your daughter?" Vivienne asked, her voice stronger now that she was warming up. 8. Her name's Holly. She's probably driving Mrs. Chen crazy with questions about where I am. Mrs. Chen, my neighbor. She watches Holly sometimes when I'm working late or when the school day care closes. I try not to impose too much, but nights like this. Harrison shook his head. I was working a double at the warehouse. Holiday season means overtime, and I need every hour I can get. Vivienne was quiet for a moment, then said, "You saved my life. I was starting to think no one would find me." "That road, there's never anyone on it. What were you doing out there in this weather?" "Trying to take a shortcut. I had a meeting in the city and was trying to get back before the storm hit. Obviously, I miscalculated." She touched her forehead gingerly, her fingers coming away bloody. "This is a disaster. You're alive. That's what matters." Harrison turned onto Oak Street, the familiar rows of modest houses coming into view. Lights glowed warm in windows, Christmas decorations twinkling through the snow. He pulled into the driveway of the small gray house next to his own even smaller blue one. "I'll just be a minute," Harrison said. "Will you be okay?" Vivienne nodded, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. Harrison jogged to Mrs. Chen's front door, which opened before he could knock. His neighbor, a tiny woman in her 70s with sharp eyes and a kind smile, stood there with Holly at her side. "Daddy." Holly launched herself at him, and Harrison caught her, holding her tight. She had his dark hair but her mother's blue eyes. Those eyes that still sometimes looked at him with confusion when she asked about the mom who'd left when she was barely 2. "I'm sorry, sweetheart, I got held up. Mrs. Chen said there's a big storm. She made me hot chocolate and we watched Mona." Holly pulled back to look at him, then frowned. "Daddy, you're bleeding." Harrison looked down at his jacket, seeing the blood from Vivienne's head wound. "It's not mine, baby. I found someone who had a car accident. She's in the truck right now, and I need to take her to the hospital." Mrs. Chen stepped forward. "Holly can stay here as long as you need, Harrison. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking, I'm offering. Go take care of your friend. Holly and I will have a sleepover. Won't we, dear?" Holly's eyes lit up despite her worry. "Really?" Harrison hesitated, but Vivienne needed medical attention, and the hospital was another 20 minutes away in good weather. Tonight it would be longer. "Okay, thank you, Mrs. Chen. I owe you. You owe me nothing. You cleared my driveway all last winter without being asked. Now go." Harrison kissed Holly's forehead. "Be good. I'll pick you up as soon as I can." "Is the lady going to be okay?" Holly asked, peering past him toward the truck. "I'm going to make sure she is." Back in the truck, Vivienne had her eyes closed, her breathing steadier now. She opened them when Harrison climbed in, snowflakes melting in his hair. "Your daughter is beautiful," she said. "You could see her from here." She came to the window. "She looks like you." Harrison pulled back onto the road, heading toward Millbrook General. "She's my whole world." The drive to the hospital tested every bit of Harrison's driving skill. Twice they slid through intersections, and once Harrison had to navigate around an abandoned car stuck in a drift. Vivienne gripped the door handle, her face pale, but she didn't complain. "Tell me about Holly," Vivienne said at one point, and Harrison realized she was trying to stay conscious. "She's in 3rd grade, loves art and hates math, though I'm trying to convince her that math is just another kind of art. She wants a dog, but our landlord doesn't allow pets. She's got this whole plan to convince him that involves a PowerPoint presentation." Harrison felt himself relax slightly. Talking about his daughter always did that. "She's smarter than I'll ever be, more creative too. Sometimes I look at her and wonder how I got so lucky." Her mother left when Holly was little. Decided parenthood wasn't for her. We got divorced, and I haven't heard from her since. Harrison kept his voice neutral, though the old anger still lurked beneath the surface. Not anger at being left, but at the abandonment of their daughter. "It's just been the 2 of us for 6 years now. That must be difficult. We manage. I work 2 jobs, one at the warehouse during the day and sometimes overnight security at the mall during busy seasons. Holly goes to before and after school care. It's not perfect, but we have each other." They fell into silence as Harrison navigated the hospital parking lot. The emergency entrance was busy despite the weather, or perhaps because of it. He pulled as close as he could and turned to Vivienne. "Can you walk if I support you?" "I'll try." Harrison came around and helped her out, taking most of her weight as she hopped on her good leg. The automatic doors whooshed open, and blessed warm air enveloped them. A nurse looked up from the reception desk and immediately came around with a wheelchair. "What happened?" she asked, professional and efficient. "Car accident," Harrison explained. "She was trapped in the vehicle, possible concussion, definitely a head laceration, and her right leg is injured, could be broken." The nurse was already wheeling Vivienne toward the back. Harrison followed, but another staff member stopped him. "Are you family?" "No, I found her on Route 47. She crashed into a tree." "We'll take it from here. You can wait in the lobby. We'll need some information from you for the police report." Harrison nodded, watching as Vivienne disappeared through the double doors. She looked back once, her eyes meeting his, and something passed between them. Gratitude, certainly, but something else too. Recognition, maybe. A connection forged in crisis. He spent the next hour giving statements to a state trooper who'd braved the storm to document the accident, describing the scene and his actions. Then came the waiting, sitting in an uncomfortable plastic chair, watching the storm rage outside and checking his phone obsessively. Mrs. Chen had texted that Holly was asleep in the guest room and not to worry. It was nearly midnight when a doctor emerged, looking tired but not grim, which Harrison took as a good sign. "You brought in Vivienne Vance?" the doctor asked. "Yes, how is she?" "Mild concussion, 12 stitches in her forehead, and a badly sprained ankle. No breaks, thankfully. She was hypothermic when she arrived, but her core temperature is back to normal. She was lucky. Another hour in that car and we'd be having a different conversation." The doctor studied him. "She's asking for you." Harrison followed the doctor back through the maze of hallways to a small room where Vivienne sat propped up in a hospital bed, a bandage stark white against her forehead. Someone had cleaned the blood from her face and dressed her in a hospital gown. She looked exhausted but alert. "Harrison," she said, and he was struck by the relief in her voice. "Hey, Doc says you're going to be fine. Thanks to you." Vivienne gestured to the chair beside the bed. "Please sit. I feel like I should be looking up at my savior." Harrison sat, suddenly aware of how he must look, covered in grime and her blood, his work clothes wrinkled and worn. "I'm just glad I came along when I did." "Do you believe in fate?" Vivienne asked. "I believe in being in the right place at the right time." Or the wrong place at the wrong time, depending on your perspective. "I believe in fate." Vivienne's eyes were serious. "I think you were meant to find me tonight." Harrison didn't know what to say to that, so he changed the subject. "Do you have someone I can call? Family? A husband?" "No husband, no family in the area. My assistant, Marlene, but not at this hour. I'll call her in the morning." Vivienne looked at her hands. "My phone was in the car, along with my purse and everything else." "The police will secure the vehicle. You'll get your things back." It's strange, Vivienne said softly. I spend so much time managing details, controlling situations, planning for every contingency, and then something like this happens and I realize how little control I actually have. What do you do? Harrison asked. For work, I mean. I run a company. Well, I own several companies, actually. Tech sector, mostly. Investments. She paused. I'm what people call successful. Congratulations. Vivienne laughed, then winced, touching her head. That sounded more pretentious than I meant it to. I'm just trying to explain why I don't have an emergency contact list memorized. I have people who handle things for me, people who know all the details so I don't have to. But right now, none of that matters. Right now, I'm just a woman who crashed her car and would have frozen to death if not for you. A nurse bustled in, checking Vivienne's vitals and adjusting her Roman 4. We're going to keep you overnight for observation, she told Vivienne. Standard procedure with head injuries. After the nurse left, Vivienne turned back to Harrison. You should go get your daughter. I'm fine now. Are you sure? I can stay a while longer. I'm sure, but Harrison, thank you. I mean it. You saved my life tonight. Harrison stood, suddenly awkward. Anyone would have done the same. But anyone didn't. You did. Vivienne reached out and took his hand, squeezing it gently. Her skin was warm now, no longer ice cold. I'd like to see you again, when I'm not concussed and you're not covered in my blood, to thank you properly. That's not necessary. Maybe not necessary. But I'd like to anyway. Harrison found himself nodding. Okay, sure. I'll check on you tomorrow if you want, see how you're doing. I'd like that very much. Harrison left the hospital feeling strangely unsettled. The storm had lessened to light flurries, and the drive back to his neighborhood took half the time. He collected Holly from Mrs. Chen's, carrying his sleeping daughter to their house and tucking her into bed without waking her. Then he stood under a hot shower for 20 minutes, watching Vivienne's blood swirl down the drain and processing the night's events. He'd saved a woman's life. That should have felt momentous, dramatic. Instead, it felt like he'd simply done what needed doing, the same way he fixed Holly's breakfast every morning and made sure her homework was done, and showed up for every parent-teacher conference, even when he was exhausted from back-to-back shifts. You did what needed doing. That was life. But as Harrison lay in bed, staring at his ceiling, it wasn't the rescue that occupied his thoughts. It was the way Vivienne had looked at him in that hospital room, like she was seeing something more than just the man who'd pulled her from a wrecked car. Like she was seeing him. The next morning, Harrison woke to Holly jumping on his bed, still in her borrowed pajamas from Mrs. Chen. Daddy, it snowed so much. Can we build a snowman? Harrison groaned and checked his phone. 7 in the morning. Don't you want to sleep in? It's Saturday. It's snow day Saturday. That's different. Despite his exhaustion, Harrison smiled. Holly's enthusiasm was infectious. Okay, snowman, but breakfast first. Over pancakes, Holly peppered him with questions about the rescue. Harrison kept the details age-appropriate, emphasizing Vivienne's bravery and downplaying the danger. Is she really okay? Holly asked, syrup on her chin. She's going to be fine. I'm going to call the hospital later and check on her. Can I come? I want to meet her. Harrison hesitated. She's in the hospital, honey. That's not really a place for kids. But I want to see if she's okay, and I made her a card. Holly pulled a folded piece of construction paper from seemingly nowhere, decorated with crayons and stickers. See. It says get well soon, and I drew her car but fixed it so it's not crashed anymore. Harrison looked at the card, his heart swelling with pride and love for his thoughtful daughter. That's beautiful, sweetheart. I'm sure she'll love it. Tell you what, let me call the hospital first and see if she's still there and if she's up for visitors. The hospital told him Vivienne was being discharged that morning. Harrison got the discharge time and made a decision that surprised him. He bundled Holly into her warmest coat, and they drove back to Millbrook General. They found Vivienne in her room, dressed in clothes that a staff member had apparently procured for her, since her own had been ruined. She looked up when they entered, surprise and pleasure crossing her face. Harrison, and this must be Holly. Holly hung back shyly for a moment, then stepped forward and held out her card. I made this for you. I'm glad you're okay. Vivienne took the card, studying it carefully. When she looked up, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. This is the most beautiful card I've ever received. Thank you, Holly. Daddy said you were very brave. He said you helped him help you. Your father is the brave one. He saved my life. Holly nodded seriously. He's good at taking care of people. He takes care of me all the time. Harrison felt his face heat. Holly, why don't you see if there's a vending machine down the hall? Get yourself a snack. He handed her a few dollar bills, and she scampered off happily. She's wonderful, Vivienne said once Holly was gone. You should be very proud. I am, every single day. Harrison shifted his weight. So you're getting out of here? Yes, finally, though I'm not quite sure where I'm going. My assistant is driving up from the city to get me, but that's going to be hours. The roads are still a mess. You could wait at my place, Harrison heard himself offer. It's not much, but it's warm and has coffee, better than sitting in a hospital lobby. Vivienne looked at him for a long moment. Are you sure? I don't want to impose. You're not imposing, I offered. Then yes, thank you, I'd like that very much. Holly returned with a candy bar and the information that there were, like, 1,000,000 buttons on the vending machine. They waited while Vivienne signed discharge papers and received care instructions, then helped her to Harrison's truck. Her ankle was wrapped and she was on crutches, moving slowly but steadily. The drive back to the house felt different in daylight, the roads clearer, the storm damage visible. They passed Vivienne's crash site, and Harrison saw her pale as she looked at the wreckage still crumpled against the tree, police tape fluttering in the breeze. I can't believe I walked away from that, she murmured. You didn't walk away. I carried you away. There's a difference. At the house, Harrison helped Vivienne navigate the icy walkway and the 3 steps up to the small porch. Inside, he was acutely aware of every shabby detail. The couch with the sagging cushion he kept meaning to fix, the scuff marks on the walls, the linoleum in the kitchen that was lifting in one corner. This was a working man's home, nothing fancy, nothing pretentious. Clean but worn, functional but plain. If Vivienne noticed or cared, she didn't show it. She settled onto the couch with obvious relief, propping her injured ankle on a pillow that Holly helpfully provided. This is lovely, Vivienne said, looking around. It feels like a real home. As opposed to a fake one, Harrison asked, amused. As opposed to a showcase. I have a penthouse in the city that my decorator chose. Everything is expensive and tasteful and absolutely soulless. This place has character. It has life. Holly brought out her collection of stuffed animals and began introducing them to Vivienne one by one, complete with backstories and voices. Harrison made coffee and listened to Vivienne engage with his daughter, asking questions and seeming genuinely interested in the intricate world Holly had created. And this is Mr. Hoppington, Holly was saying, holding up a battered stuffed rabbit. He's very old but very wise. Daddy gave him to me when I was born. He looks like he's been very well loved, Vivienne said gently. He has. He goes everywhere with me. Well, not to school anymore because I'm too old for that, but he still sleeps in my bed. Harrison brought coffee to Vivienne, their fingers brushing as she took the mug. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through him, and from the way Vivienne's eyes widened slightly, she'd felt it too. They spent the morning in easy conversation. Vivienne told stories about disastrous business meetings and difficult clients, making them funny and self-deprecating. Harrison talked about warehouse mishaps and his coworkers, the cast of characters who made his long days bearable. Holly colored at the coffee table, occasionally adding her own observations. Around noon, Harrison made grilled cheese sandwiches, apologizing for the simple lunch. This is perfect, Vivienne insisted. I eat at fancy restaurants all the time for business. Give me a good grilled cheese any day. Holly sat next to Vivienne on the couch, showing her pictures she'd drawn, and Harrison watched them together. something warm and unfamiliar growing in his chest. It had been years since Holly had female company beyond her teachers and Mrs. Chen. Harrison had dated sporadically, but never anyone serious, never anyone he'd brought home. Holly was his priority, and most women didn't understand that or didn't want to deal with it, but watching Vivienne with his daughter felt natural, easy. There was no forced interest, no patronizing tone. Just genuine engagement. Vivienne's phone rang mid-afternoon. Her assistant had finally made it to the outskirts of town. Harrison drove Vivienne to meet Marlene at a gas station off the highway, Holly coming along for the ride. Marlene was a efficient-looking woman in her 50s who immediately fussed over Vivienne while simultaneously fielding phone calls and rescheduling appointments. She thanked Harrison profusely, pressing a business card into his hand. "Anything you need," Marlene said. "Anything at all, miss." Vance will want to stay in touch. Vivienne had moved to stand by Harrison, balancing on her crutches. "I'll call you," she told him, "if that's okay." "Yeah," Harrison said, meaning it. "I'd like that. And Holly." Vivienne smiled at his daughter. "Thank you for the card and for sharing your stuffed animals with me. You made my day much brighter." Holly gave Vivienne a careful hug, mindful of her injuries, then scampered back to the truck. Harrison and Vivienne stood there for a moment longer, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "Take care of that ankle," Harrison finally said. "Take care of yourself. And Harrison, thank you again. For everything." Harrison watched Marlene's luxury sedan pull away, Vivienne's face visible in the back window until they turned onto the highway. Then he climbed back into his truck where Holly was waiting. "I like her," Holly announced. "She's nice." "Yeah," Harrison agreed. "She is." He didn't expect to hear from Vivienne again, not really. She lived in a different world, one of penthouses and assistants and multiple companies. Their paths had crossed by accident, and now they would diverge again. That was how life worked, but 3 days later his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. He answered it cautiously. "Harrison, it's Vivienne Vance." "Hey, how are you feeling?" "Much better. The headaches have mostly stopped, and I'm getting around pretty well on the crutches. Listen, I wanted to thank you properly. Would you and Holly have dinner with me? There's a great Italian place in Millbrook. My treat, obviously." Harrison's first instinct was to decline. He didn't want her charity, didn't want to be the charity case she felt obligated to reward. But something in her voice stopped him. She didn't sound obligated. She sounded hopeful. "You don't need to do that," he said carefully. "I know I don't need to. I want to. Please, Harrison." It would mean a lot to me. And because he wanted to see her again, wanted it more than was probably wise, Harrison said yes. The Italian restaurant was nicer than anywhere Harrison usually took Holly, the kind of place with cloth napkins and a wine list. He'd stressed about what to wear, finally settling on the khakis and button-down shirt he wore to parent-teacher conferences. Holly wore her favorite dress, the blue one with the flowers, and Harrison had braided her hair carefully. Vivienne was already there when they arrived, seated at a corner booth. The bandage on her forehead had been replaced with a smaller one, barely noticeable. She wore a simple black dress and a string of pearls, elegant but not ostentatious. Her face lit up when she saw them. "You came." "I wasn't sure you would." "Of course we came," Holly said, sliding into the booth. "Daddy said there's spaghetti here. The best spaghetti in the state," Vivienne confirmed, "and tiramisu for dessert if you're good." The dinner was easier than Harrison had anticipated. Vivienne had a gift for conversation, drawing Holly out of her shell and making Harrison feel like his opinions actually mattered. They talked about everything and nothing. Holly's school, Vivienne's work, Harrison's plans to maybe go back to school someday and finish his degree. "What would you study?" Vivienne asked. "Engineering, maybe. I like building things, figuring out how things work. But it's hard to imagine finding the time, between work and Holly and just keeping up with everything." "I think you'd be an excellent engineer," Vivienne said seriously. "You have that mind. I could see it in how you approached getting me out of the car. Methodical, practical, creative." Harrison felt his face warm at the praise. When was the last time someone had complimented his mind? After dinner, as they stood outside the restaurant in the cold evening air, Vivienne said, "I'd like to see you again. Both of you, if you're interested." Holly bounced on her toes. "Yes, can we, Daddy?" Harrison looked at Vivienne, at the hope and uncertainty in her eyes, and realized this successful, confident businesswoman was just as nervous as he was. "Yeah," he said softly. "We'd like that." Over the next few weeks, they fell into a pattern. Vivienne would drive up from the city on weekends, and they'd spend time together. Sometimes it was just coffee while Holly played in the park. Sometimes it was trips to museums or the movies. Once, memorably, they went ice skating, and Harrison had to support both Vivienne on her still-healing ankle and Holly, who'd never been on skates before. Harrison noticed things about Vivienne. The way she always asked Holly about her week first, genuinely interested in the playground drama and art projects. How she never made Harrison feel less than, despite their obvious economic disparity. The way she laughed, uninhibited and genuine. How she looked at him sometimes when she thought he wasn't paying attention, like she was memorizing his face. He was falling for her. He knew it, and it terrified him. Because what did he have to offer someone like Vivienne? He was a warehouse worker with an unfinished degree and a tiny rental house. He worked 2 jobs and still struggled sometimes to make ends meet. He had no prospects, no connections, nothing but the fierce love he had for his daughter and the determination to give her a good life. But Vivienne kept coming back. Week after week, she made the drive from the city. She started keeping a toothbrush at his house, some comfortable clothes in the closet. Holly started calling her Aunt Vive, which made Vivienne's eyes shine with emotion every time. One Saturday in early February, Harrison and Holly drove into the city to visit Vivienne's penthouse. She'd been hesitant to invite them, almost apologetic, which Harrison hadn't understood until he saw the place. It was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine, art on the walls that might have been originals. It was beautiful and impressive and absolutely overwhelming. "See what I mean?" Vivienne said softly, standing next to Harrison while Holly explored carefully, hands behind her back like she was in a museum. "It's not a home, it's a display case." "It's amazing," Harrison said honestly, "but I see what you mean about it lacking something. It lacks heart. It lacks evidence that anyone actually lives here." Vivienne turned to him. "Your house has Holly's artwork on the fridge. It has photos on the walls. It has that crack in the ceiling you keep meaning to fix but never get around to. It has life." They ordered Chinese takeout and ate it sitting on the floor because Vivienne's dining table felt too formal. Holly fell asleep during the movie they put on, and Harrison carried her to the guest bedroom Vivienne showed him. When he came back, Vivienne was standing by the windows, looking out at the city lights. Harrison joined her, maintaining a careful distance even though every part of him wanted to close that gap. "I need to tell you something," Vivienne said, her voice quiet. "About me, about my life." "Okay." "I'm wealthy. I mean, you probably guessed that, but I'm very wealthy. Millionaire several times over. I started my first company when I was 25 with money I inherited from my grandmother. It succeeded beyond my wildest dreams. I've been lucky, made smart investments, and now I have more money than I'll ever need." She turned to face him. "I'm telling you this because I don't want secrets between us. I don't want you to find out from a Google search or see me on some business magazine cover and feel like I hid something from you." Harrison absorbed this information. He'd known she was successful, obviously, but hearing her say it made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "Why are you telling me now?" he asked. "Because I'm falling in love with you," Vivienne said simply. "And I need you to know who I am, all of who I am. The money is part of my life, but it's not who I am. Just like your financial struggles are part of your life, but don't define who you are. You're a good man, Harrison, a wonderful father. You're kind and strong and you make me laugh. You see me, not my bank account. And I need to know if you can accept all of me, including the parts that might make this complicated. Harrison's heart was pounding. You're falling in love with me. Yes, is that okay? Vivienne, I'm a warehouse worker. I rent a tiny house. I shop at discount stores and clip coupons. I can't give you any of this. He gestured at the expensive penthouse around them. I can't even afford to take you to nice restaurants without worrying about my budget. I don't want you to give me this. I have this. It's empty and cold and I hate coming here. Vivienne stepped closer to him. I want what you have. That warmth, that realness. I want Saturday morning pancakes and Holly's artwork and your terrible jokes. I want you, Harrison. Not your money or status or anything like that, just you. I'm falling in love with you too, Harrison admitted, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. I have been for weeks, but I kept thinking I wasn't enough. You're everything, Vivienne said, and then she kissed him. It was soft and sweet and perfect, and when they broke apart, Harrison was smiling like an idiot. This is crazy, he said. We barely know each other. I know that you take your coffee with too much sugar. I know you always check your phone compulsively because you worry about Holly. I know you sing off-key in the truck when you think no one is listening. I know you have a scar on your left hand from when you were building a treehouse as a kid. I know you want to make the world better for your daughter. What else do I need to know? I snore. Vivienne laughed. I can work with that. They talked for hours that night, curled up together on the couch, mapping out what this relationship might look like. It wasn't simple. Vivienne had business obligations, travel requirements. Harrison had his custody arrangement, even though Holly's mother had never exercised her visitation rights, and his work schedule. But they both agreed it was worth trying. The next few months were a study in making it work. Vivienne started spending more time in Millbrook, working remotely when she could. She rented an office space in town for the days she needed a professional setting. Harrison found himself in the city more often, with Vivienne paying for a babysitter for Holly on the nights when they wanted adult time alone. The money issue came up, inevitably. Vivienne wanted to help, wanted to make Harrison's life easier. Harrison's pride bristled at the idea of accepting anything. They had their first real fight about it in April. Vivienne had offered to pay for Holly's summer camp, an art program Holly desperately wanted to attend, but Harrison couldn't afford. Why won't you just let me do this? Vivienne asked, frustrated. I have the money. It means nothing to me, but it means everything to Holly. Because I take care of my daughter, Harrison shot back. That's my job, my responsibility. I'm not trying to take that away from you. I'm trying to help because I care about both of you. It feels like charity. It's not charity, Harrison. It's love. When you love someone, you want to make their life better. You want to help carry their burdens. And what do I do for you? Harrison asked, the old insecurities rising. What do I bring to this relationship? You don't need my money. You don't need me to fix things. You don't need anything from me. Vivienne stared at him. Are you serious right now? Harrison, you give me everything that actually matters. You give me love and acceptance and a place where I can just be myself. You've given me a family. Do you know how long I've been alone? Do you know what it's like to have everything money can buy but no one to share it with? You've given me purpose beyond the next acquisition, the next deal. You've given me Holly's laughter and your smile and the feeling of being part of something real. So don't tell me you don't bring anything to this relationship. Harrison felt his anger deflate. I'm sorry, I just hate feeling like I can't provide. You provide what matters most. The rest is just details. Vivienne moved closer to him. Let me do this for Holly. Not because you can't, but because I want to. Because she's part of my life now too, and I want to see her happy. Harrison finally agreed, and Holly went to art camp, coming home every day covered in paint and buzzing with excitement. It was the first of many compromises, many conversations about money and pride and partnership. In June, Vivienne met Holly's school friends and their parents at an end-of-year picnic. Harrison watched nervously, wondering how Vivienne would fit into his world, but she charmed everyone, sitting cross-legged on the grass and helping the kids with their three-legged race. In July, Harrison met Vivienne's business associates at a charity gala she'd asked him to attend. He'd been terrified, convinced he'd use the wrong fork or say something stupid, but Vivienne stayed by his side, introducing him proudly as her boyfriend, and no one made him feel less than. In August, Holly asked if Vivienne was going to be her new mom. They were at the park, Holly on the swings with Harrison pushing, Vivienne sitting on a nearby bench with her laptop, trying to finish a proposal. Harrison had frozen, not sure how to answer. "What do you think about that?" he'd asked carefully. Holly had considered it seriously. "I think I'd like it. I mean, I know my real mom left and doesn't want me, but maybe Aunt Vive could be my mom instead. She acts like a mom already." Harrison's heart had broken and healed simultaneously at those words. "Your real mom made a mistake, Holly, a huge one. And if Vivienne becomes part of our family officially, I'd be honored. But that's a big decision, and we need to talk about it more, okay?" That night, after Holly was in bed, Harrison relayed the conversation to Vivienne. She'd cried, actually cried, holding Harrison tight. "I love her so much," Vivienne said. "I never thought I wanted children, but now I can't imagine my life without Holly in it, without both of you in it. She loves you too, we both do." "Marry me," Vivienne said suddenly. "I know it's fast, I know people will say it's too soon, but I know what I want. I want you. I want Holly. I want mornings in that tiny kitchen and nights watching movies on that broken-down couch. I want to be a family." Harrison pulled back to look at her. "Are you proposing to me?" "Yes." "Is that okay? I know traditionally the man is supposed to ask, but I'm not a very traditional person. I don't have a ring to give you. I don't need a ring. I need an answer." Harrison thought about his life before that snowy night when he'd found Vivienne trapped in her car. The endless working, the constant stress, the loneliness that he'd never acknowledged because he had Holly and Holly was enough. Except she wasn't, not really. He'd been half alive, going through the motions. Vivienne had changed everything. She'd brought light and laughter and possibility. She'd shown him that he deserved love, that his value wasn't measured in dollar signs, but in the size of his heart. She'd given him a future that looked like more than just survival. "Yes," Harrison said. "Absolutely yes." They told Holly the next morning over breakfast. She'd screamed with joy and tackled Vivienne in a hug that nearly knocked them both over. Then she'd insisted on calling Mrs. Chen immediately to share the news. The wedding planning was interesting. Vivienne wanted to give Harrison whatever wedding he desired, but Harrison wanted simple and meaningful. They compromised on a small ceremony in Millbrook with close friends and family, followed by a larger reception in the city for Vivienne's business associates and social circle. Harrison insisted on contributing financially to the wedding, and they had another long conversation about money and partnership. Finally, they agreed that Harrison would plan the ceremony and Vivienne would plan the reception, each paying for their respective part. Harrison's ceremony was perfect. They got married in the park where he and Holly had spent countless afternoons, under a simple arch that his coworker Jeff had built. Holly was the flower girl, taking her duties very seriously. Mrs. Chen sat in the front row, crying happy tears. Harrison wore a simple suit, and Vivienne wore an elegant white dress that somehow managed to be both sophisticated and understated. When Harrison said his vows, his voice cracked with emotion. "Vivienne, you came into my life on the worst night possible and made it the best night of my life. You showed me that love isn't about what you can provide materially, but what you can offer from your heart. You've loved my daughter like she's your own. You've seen me at my worst and made me want to be my best. I promise to love you, support you, and be your partner in all things. I promise to never let pride get in the way of letting you help me, and to never let money define our worth. I promise to make you laugh, even when my jokes are terrible. Most of all, I promise to build a life with you that's filled with all the warmth and realness you've been missing." Vivienne was crying by the end, and her voice shook when she said her own vows. "Harrison, the night you found me in that car, I thought my life was ending. Instead, it was beginning. You gave me everything I'd been searching for without knowing I was searching. You gave me love without conditions, acceptance without judgment. You gave me Holly and the family I'd always wanted but never believed I could have. I promise to love you and Holly with everything I have. I promise to respect your independence while offering my support. I promise to appreciate the life we're building together in that tiny house that somehow holds more happiness than my penthouse ever did. I promise to be your partner, your friend, and your love for all my days. When they kissed, Holly cheered, and everyone laughed and applauded. The reception in the city was a different beast entirely. An elegant affair at a 5-star hotel with crystal chandeliers and a live orchestra. Harrison felt out of place initially, but Vivienne's hand in his and Holly's excitement grounded him. His co-workers from the warehouse attended, looking as overwhelmed as he felt, and Vivienne made sure they felt welcome, introducing them around and making sure they knew how important they were to Harrison. The honeymoon was a negotiation, too. Vivienne had wanted to take them all to Europe, a month-long tour. Harrison had protested, thinking about his jobs, but Vivienne had pointed out gently that he'd given notice at both places, something they'd agreed on before the wedding. She wanted him to go back to school full-time, finish his engineering degree. She could support the family while he did it. It had been hard for Harrison to accept, harder than almost anything else. His identity was tied up in being a provider, a working man. But Vivienne had made him see that providing for his family wasn't just about money. It was about being present, being available, being the kind of father Holly deserved and the kind of husband Vivienne wanted. "You'll be providing our future," Vivienne had said. "You'll be showing Holly that it's never too late to pursue your dreams. You'll be investing in yourself so that someday you can build the career you actually want instead of just working to survive. That's providing, Harrison. That's being a good father and husband." So Harrison had quit his jobs, though he'd given generous notice and helped train his replacements. And they compromised on the honeymoon, taking a 2-week trip to a beach resort where Holly could play in the sand and Harrison could finally relax without worrying about shift schedules and overtime hours. They moved into a new house that September, shortly before Holly started 4th grade. Not Vivienne's penthouse, which she sold without regret, and not Harrison's rental either. A real house in Millbrook, a 4-bedroom colonial with a yard where Holly could play and a garage where Harrison could set up a workshop. It wasn't the biggest house or the fanciest, but it was theirs, and it felt like home from the moment they carried in the first box. Harrison started classes at the community college that fall, nervous and excited. He was older than most of his classmates, but he didn't care. He was finally pursuing something he'd always wanted, and it felt incredible. Vivienne worked from her home office, running her companies remotely and traveling only when absolutely necessary. Holly adjusted to having both parents around more, and the change was remarkable. She thrived. Harrison officially adopted Holly in October, a process Vivienne helped arrange. Holly's biological mother had signed away her rights without contest, and Harrison's name was added to Holly's birth certificate. He'd cried when the judge signed the papers, even though he'd been Holly's father in every way that mattered since the day she was born. Now it was legal and official and permanent. They settled into family life. Harrison studied in the evenings after Holly was in bed, Vivienne often sitting beside him with her own work. They took turns making dinner, though Vivienne admitted freely that Harrison was the better cook. Holly joined the art club at school and the soccer team, finally able to do extracurriculars that Harrison had never been able to afford before. The money issue never completely went away, but it became easier. Harrison learned to accept help without feeling diminished. Vivienne learned to ask before offering, to let Harrison contribute in the ways he could. They merged their finances, though Vivienne made sure Harrison understood he had equal say in all financial decisions, despite the disparity in what they'd brought to the marriage. On their first anniversary, Harrison surprised Vivienne with a gift he'd made himself in his workshop. It was a wooden box, beautifully crafted, with an inlaid design on the lid. "It's gorgeous," Vivienne said, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "Harrison, when did you learn to do this?" "I've been taking a woodworking elective. I wanted to make you something that came from me, not from a store." He showed her how to open it, revealing the velvet-lined interior. "It's for your jewelry. I noticed you were keeping your grandmother's pearls in a shoebox." Vivienne's eyes filled with tears. "This is the most thoughtful gift anyone's ever given me. I love it. I love you." "I love you too. You've given me everything this year. Let me give you something handmade with love." They made love that night with a passion that had only deepened over their year together, and afterward, lying tangled together in their bed, Vivienne said, "I want to have a baby. With you. I know we have Holly, and she's enough if that's all you want, but I'd love to have a child with you." To experience that journey together. Harrison was quiet for a moment, processing. "Are you sure? You're 37, not that you're old," he added hastily, "but I know the risks increase." "I'm sure. I've been thinking about it for months. I want to be pregnant, to feel a baby growing inside me. I want Holly to have a sibling. I want us to create a life together, literally." "Then let's do it," Harrison said, pulling her close. "Let's have a baby." It took 4 months of trying, months that brought them even closer together. When Vivienne finally got a positive test, they both cried. They told Holly that night, and she was ecstatic, immediately planning what she would teach her little brother or sister. The pregnancy was mostly smooth, though Vivienne's company responsibilities made it stressful at times. Harrison supported her however he could, taking over more of the household duties, rubbing her feet when they swelled, holding her hair when morning sickness struck. He was finishing his 2nd year of school, maintaining excellent grades while being a present husband and father. Their son was born in June, a healthy baby boy with Harrison's dark hair and Vivienne's green eyes. They named him Henry, and Holly fell in love with him immediately, insisting on helping with everything despite being only 10. Harrison held his son for the first time and marveled at how his life had changed. 2 years ago, he'd been barely scraping by, exhausted and lonely and afraid for his and Holly's future. Now he had a wife who loved him, 2 beautiful children, a home, and a future that looked bright and full of possibility. "Thank you," he whispered to Vivienne as she rested in the hospital bed, looking tired but radiant, "for finding me, for choosing me." "You found me," Vivienne corrected. "You literally saved my life. And then you gave it meaning." Life with a newborn was chaotic but wonderful. Harrison took the summer off from classes to help, and they navigated sleepless nights and endless feedings together. Holly was an attentive big sister, always wanting to hold Henry or read to him or show him her artwork. Vivienne worked reduced hours, conducting meetings via video conference when possible and delegating more to her managers. She'd realized that her companies would survive without her constant presence, and her family needed her more than her board members did. Harrison went back to school that fall, now in his final year of his engineering degree. It was hard balancing classes with family time, but he managed, driven by the knowledge that he was building something lasting, something meaningful. He wanted to make Vivienne proud, but more than that, he wanted to make himself proud. He wanted to show Holly and Henry that it was never too late to pursue your dreams. He graduated the following spring, top of his class, with job offers from 3 different engineering firms. He chose a local company, one that would allow him to be home for dinner most nights and attend Holly's soccer games and Henry's future school events. At his graduation, as Harrison walked across the stage to accept his diploma, he looked out at the audience and saw his family. Vivienne holding Henry, who was almost a year old and trying to eat the program. Holly waving frantically, a poster she'd made declaring, "My dad rocks." Mrs. Chen sitting beside them, clapping enthusiastically. This was what success looked like, Harrison thought. Not money or status or material possessions, though those were nice. Success was love and family and people who believed in you. Success was second chances and new beginnings. After the ceremony, Vivienne hugged him tight, Henry squished between them. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "You've worked so hard for this. I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have. It would have taken longer and it would have been harder, but you would have done it. That's who you are, Harrison. You do what needs doing." She kissed him softly. "But I'm glad I could help. I'm glad I get to be part of your journey." That summer, they took the family trip to Europe that Vivienne had originally wanted for their honeymoon. Holly was 11 now, old enough to appreciate the art museums and historical sites. Henry, at 13 months, was mostly interested in pigeons and gelato, but he was a good traveler. They spent 3 weeks exploring, making memories, being together. One evening in Paris, sitting at a sidewalk cafe while Holly practiced her terrible French with an amused waiter and Henry napped in his stroller, Vivienne took Harrison's hand. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked. "When you found me in the car?" "Sometimes. It feels like a lifetime ago." "It was our before," Vivienne said. "Everything that came after that moment is our real life. Sometimes I try to imagine what would have happened if you hadn't driven down that road, if you'd taken a different route home or left work 5 minutes later." "I don't like thinking about that," Harrison admitted, "because the alternative is you dying in that car, or someone else finding you and you going back to your old life and me staying in mine and none of this happening." "Fate," Vivienne said firmly. "I told you that first night I believe in fate. We were meant to find each other. Then I'm grateful for fate, and snowstorms, and broken guardrails." Harrison raised her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles, and for the courage to pull over and help instead of assuming someone else would. "My hero," Vivienne said, smiling. "Your husband," Harrison corrected. "Your partner, your equal. All of the above." They returned home to Millbrook and the life they'd built together. Harrison started his new job and loved it, finding satisfaction in solving problems and designing solutions. Vivienne streamlined her business operations even further, focusing on what she enjoyed and delegating the rest. She'd discovered she was happier as an investor and advisor than as a hands-on CEO, and she'd restructured her companies to reflect that. Holly started middle school that fall, navigating the complicated social waters with the confidence of a child who knew she was loved and supported. Henry grew into a curious toddler who got into everything and kept them constantly on their toes. The dog they finally got, a rescue mutt named Biscuit, completed the chaos. On a December evening, almost 4 years after that snowy night when everything changed, Harrison stood in their kitchen making dinner while Henry played with blocks at his feet and Biscuit begged for scraps. Through the window, he could see Vivienne and Holly building a snowman in the yard, their laughter carrying through the glass. His phone buzzed with a text from his coworker about a project they were collaborating on. His engineering textbooks sat on a shelf in his office, no longer needed but kept as a reminder of what he'd accomplished. Holly's artwork covered the refrigerator, Henry's baby pictures crowded the mantel, and Vivienne's laptop was open on the dining table where she'd left it when the snowman building had commenced. This was their life. Messy and busy, and absolutely perfect. Vivienne came inside, stomping snow from her boots, her cheeks pink with cold. "Holly is very concerned that Frosty isn't anatomically correct. She wants to add more snowballs for proper proportion." Harrison laughed. "That's my girl, always worried about the details. Dinner smells amazing." Vivienne wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder. "What did I do to deserve this life?" "You crashed your car in a snowstorm," Harrison said, turning in her arms to kiss her properly. "Best accident ever." "Worst accident, best outcome," Vivienne corrected. "I'd go through it all again in a heartbeat if I knew it would lead me here. To you, to this family." "I love you," Harrison said, meaning it with everything he had. "Thank you for proposing to me. Thank you for being patient with my pride. Thank you for loving Holly like your own. Thank you for Henry and Biscuit and this house and this life. Thank you for saving me," Vivienne replied. "In every way a person can be saved." Holly burst through the door, bringing cold air and snow with her. "Mom, Dad, come see. I made Frosty look way better, Mom and Dad." Such simple words, but they never failed to make both Harrison and Vivienne's eyes mist up. "Coming, sweetheart," Vivienne called, then turned back to Harrison. "Our daughter is calling. Duty awaits." "Our daughter," Harrison repeated, loving the sound of it. "Our son, our life." They went outside together, Henry toddling between them, holding both their hands, to admire Holly's improved snowman. And as the snow began to fall again, soft and gentle this time, Harrison looked at his family and felt nothing but gratitude. 4 years ago, he'd been struggling, alone, afraid. Now he was thriving, loved, hopeful. All because he'd pulled over on a snowy road and helped a stranger in need. All because Vivienne had seen past his financial struggles to the man beneath. All because they'd both been brave enough to take a chance on love. As they stood together in the snow, the lights from their house casting a warm glow, Harrison knew this was what happily ever after looked like. Not perfect, not without challenges, but full of love and laughter and the certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. Their story had started with a rescue, but it had become so much more. It had become a partnership, a family, a future. It had become a love story for the ages. Proof that sometimes the best things in life come from the moments when we choose to stop and help, when we open our hearts to possibility, when we believe that everyone deserves a second chance at happiness. And they all lived happily, messily, wonderfully ever after.